I don't think this is right. So now let's start. All right. So where are we starting from? Now, you can see what is on my screen. Complete data analysis workflow with concept explained. Now, if you are working in a company, right, it will not be more or less like task. It's not that we'll be giving any instructions. Of course, we'll be giving instructions, but not directly the way we are accustomed to the when we started off. Much more of what we are going to be doing will be of our own discretion and everything that has to do with the need of that company or organization. So now, when we are talking of data analysis, now what is the workflow? Yes, that's what I want us to talk about. Now, number one, let's talk about data sources and access. Now, it is somewhere we are going to get our data from, right? So the data that we want to work on, we get it from somewhere. Of course, for example, if you are working in the bank, definitely the data you are going to get will be from the bank, from people's transaction, the money that of course, the money that enters, and so on, and customers' information, right? That will be our source of data. Likewise, let's say you are working in a telecommunication company, the source of data will be people's information also, right? And so on and so forth. So calls and so on and so forth. So they are our source of data. So that's what we want to look at first. So data sources and access. Data sources refers to where data originates. So where is our data originating from, right? Now, we have two primary sources of data. We have two major sources of data. Now, the first one is primary data, collected first hand, right? So it's not as if you are taking it from somebody. You are the one that produced that data. Look at bank information, for example. If you have a data analyst in a bank, that data analyst will have a kind of first-hand source of data. Since it's not going to an organization to collect, it's still that same organization. So example is surveys and experiments, right? Now we have secondary data collected by others. For example, if you need data about the population of the whole world, yeah, something like that, you will be talking about something like World Health Organization, those organizations around the world. They are the ones that will give you that data. So you are not the owner of that data. So they are the ones. So it is secondary source of data. Now, when we are talking of data access, right? So what are we really talking about? So we have different types of data access. Part of it is open access. We have some data that are open to the public, right? So that's what we mean by open access data. Then we have restricted access, right? So you have some data that is just specific set of people that has access to that data, not just everybody. Unlike open access data that everyone has access to it. Then we have paid access. So there are some data that you have to pay to get them, right? So those are the sources, those are the types of data access we are talking about. So we are talking of open access, we are talking of restricted access, and we are talking of paid access, right? So that's that or that. Now, ensure you understand terms of use before using any data set. Before you use any data, all right, you must comply with those that give you that data. You must comply with their terms of use before you use any data from them. Because when we are talking of data, sometimes you can be dealing with people's information. So that's why you can't just use any data you are not given to use or you are not authorized to use. Just because you see it does not mean you'll be able to use it. A lot of people can be jailed for that. A typical example is the case of Edward Snowden. I don't know if anybody knows Edward Snowden. One of the reasons why he's still a fugitive today in the United States is because of the data information from, I think, FBI or CIA or thereabouts, that it is releasing, the bulk of information is releasing to the public, right? So sometimes we don't, when we are talking of data, it's not really about how the public feels about the data or not, but about the organization where you are getting the data from, their terms of use, their terms and condition before you get the data. So it's not about emotions or something like that, or else one can be jailed, one can even get killed. So when you just use any data unnecessarily like that. So Edward Snowden is still a fugitive till today, and we have many people like that, and so on and so forth. So people can fight for data, can die because of data. Again, you hear this balance very often these days, that they say that data is the new oil. You see that in the olden days, maybe like in the 60s or 70s, when all this crude oil exploration began, right? You see, it made a lot of countries to be rich, right? Countries like Saudi Arabia became rich as a result of the oil boom. So in the 21st century, we will not have a oil boom. We will not have a oil boom. What we have now is the data boom. That's why they call it the new oil. So in this century, you'll be hearing the word like data is the new oil. There is a reason for that, because much of the information that we are going to, that we drive, the driver of the 21st century and the 22nd century will be data. Okay, you can say that, okay, why will my picture, your picture is a form of data, and other people's picture. Why will my picture be so important as to be a driver of technology and so on, as to be a driver of innovations? Yes, I tell you what, it is all these things that make up the bulk of what we call artificial intelligence and machine learning as we know it today. That is why it is usually called the new oil. So data is the new oil. So now we have to be very careful with our usage of data we are not given access to. For example, if you have access to Facebook data, you can't just use it because you are not authorized to use it. So that's that. Now this covers, so now that let's look at data governance, legislation, and ethics. And when we are talking of data governance, so what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Legislation and ethics. Now this covers responsible data usage. Now governance has to do with data ownership, security, access, control. So legislation, there are a lot of legislation as to the use of data. There is also a saying in the world today that the person with the data, right, controls the affair. That's the truth. Even in people's daily life, it happens, right? Anybody that has one's information, one's secrets, right, is likely going to influence one. Let's say, for example, you have a husband that is married, a man that is married, and all of a sudden the man also has side chick, right? Now, the wife must not know about that. Now, all of a sudden he has a what are they calling it now? He has a chef at home that works for them at home. All of it, of course, the chef is supposed to obey his master, right? He's the one paying the chef's salary and so on and so on and so on and so forth. So the chef should do well with them at home. But maybe one day the chef just discovered that the husband has somebody outside that is marrying. You see that the boss attitude towards the chef will change. He will not see the chef just as a chef again, because the chef has information on the husband, and because of that information, he's able to blackmail the husband. So that way, the husband will go to any length to make sure it's not blackmailed. And what will the chef do? He will be making use of that information. So he will use that information to gain control and also to get whatever thing he wants to get from the husband. I'm telling you, so that's just a real life application of data or information in daily lives and so on and so forth. So now, legislation. So we have different legislation as to the use of data. Every country has legislation about data usage. You can't just divulge people's information. Those social media that we are looking at, there is a lot of legislation they must follow. That's why, well, to a reasonable extent, your secret is safe on social media because, one, the company that owns most of those social media cannot put out people's secrets. So one part, it is safe. Another part, it is not safe because the government of that country is privy to those information. And so one way or the other, they can, one way or the other, lure those social, if they need one particular person's information, they can easily lure them, lure the complaint to get the information from them. Another case is if you go to, for example, in Nigeria, let's say somebody does something that is bad, right? Now, lastly, the person calls, and then after making that call, right, it was that call that he used to do that bad thing. So all of a sudden, the police took the person to the police station, right? One of those things they are going to do is, okay, who did he call last? They look at the call log, they look at who he called last, and what will they do? They'll go to the network provider that they should give them the call log of that person, right? So that they are going to know the exact call that he made. Also, if it has to do with banks, somebody withdraw, the person is a fraud, he withdraws from a bank, what happens? They go to the bank to collect the statement of account, right? To know when they withdrew, and you see, all of these things centers on data. I'm saying this so that we are going to see more value to data, and if it is happening like that, now think of technology. We have automotive, self-driving cars these days, and so on and so forth. So there are legislation behind all this. Also ethics, informed consent, data anonymization, non-manipulation. So those are data ethics. So before you use anybody's data or any organization data, they must be informed. Then there must be anonymity. Yes. Let's say somebody tells you something, right? The person can say he wants to remain anonymous. So if the person says he wants to remain anonymous, then you must make sure the person is anonymous. You don't divulge, no matter how bad it is. You are not in any position to divulge such information. So collect data legally, use it ethically, and protect privacy. Privacy is the key word when we are talking of data. No, now let's talk about types of data. So what are the types of data? Now, we can group data into many different forms. We can look at the type of data by structure. So under this, we have two types of data. We have structured data and unstructured data. So now, what are examples of structured data? We have tables, Excel, CSV, and SQL, right? Those are examples of structured data. We are still going to look at all of them by the time we start the project. Then we have unstructured data. What examples of unstructured data? Text, images, videos. They are classified as unstructured data. So again, let's go over it. Now, when we look at data by structure, we have two types, structured and unstructured. So under structured, we have tables. You can see that table is indeed a structured data. We have Excel, we have CSV. What's the full meaning of this CSV? I think that's comma separated file or thereabouts. Yes, comma. We are still going to use CSV file as we go. Then we have SQL data, right? It's also an example of that is structured query language. That's the full meaning of SQL or SQL. So those are examples of structured data. Now we have unstructured data such as text, images, videos, text, images, and videos. Sorry, I want to be sure. Okay, you're right. I want to be sure of the if we have a lot of people now. So those are examples of data by structure. Now, what of data by nature? So under this, we have qualitative data and quantitative data, right? When we are talking of qualitative data, it has to do with descriptive data, right? Such as color, gender, height, those ones are descriptive. So that way you are talking of qualitative data. Now, when you are talking of quantitative data, you are talking of numerical data, right? So that is data by nature. So now under qualitative data, we can split qualitative data into two. We can split it into discrete and continuous, right? Now under discrete, what do we mean? Okay, somebody is messaging. All right, sir. Okay. Now under qualitative data, we have descriptive and continuous data. So now, when we say descriptive, what do we mean? We mean all counts, such as number of students. So those ones are discrete, right? Now, under continuous, we mean measurable, data that are measurable. When we are talking of measure, we are talking of height. You can measure height, right? You can also measure temperature. Those ones are continuous data. So discrete, you are talking of, e.g., number of students for discrete. So that's that on that part. So now understanding data types helps in choosing the right analysis tools. So it is very, very important that we understand data types. So we'll still come to that. Everything we are using here is there are things that we are still going to use. We are going to do practically before we start all those all those projects we did in ALX. Now, data aggregation and descriptive statistics. Now, what do we mean by aggregation? That is grouping data to get summaries. Now, what's even the purpose of data analysis? The purpose of data analysis is to extract information from data. So that's where data aggregation comes in. And the best way to extract information from any data is to summarize that data. Then, after you have analyzed it, you come up with a summary of what the data is saying. Because nobody cares when you are presenting to the board of a company or organization, nobody cares about the data set. There's nothing they want to use it to do. So what they will need is your dashboard, right? The summary reports. So that's what is important to them. So you are the one, your data sets and the likes is your problem. It's not the problem of the organization. So data aggregation is very, very important. So aggregation has to do with grouping data to get summaries. Now, what are examples? Total sales per month, right? That's an example of aggregation. Now you have sales every day. So nobody cares what's the business of the company with all these sales. Okay, but you are able to give them that, okay, this is what we have at the end of the month, right? Then, because they will even be bored, and by summarizing data makes you to be more or less, what do I say now? Makes people to believe you, right? Because now you are giving report to people, you are now telling them the data sets, how you clean the data, how you do blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares about all that. So, and let's say you are looking for clients, you want to present something to clients, and you are telling them all those stories. Will that make them to invest in your company? There is no way they are going to invest in such company. They only need your summary, what you have to offer them, not stories. Also, average score per class is an example of data aggregation. Now, descriptive statistics. What do we mean by descriptive statistics? So, basic summaries of data. So, when we are under here, we have mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, range. All these things are familiar territory to most of us, at least basic secondary school mathematics or basic high school mathematics. We have done all this in one form or the other before. Now, this gives you an overview before deep analysis. So you need all these things before you begin deep analysis of any data. So now we also have measure of central tendency. So when you are talking of measure of central tendency, you are still talking about main median mode. Yes. So that is the measure of center. So that's the measure of central tendency. And what are examples of measure of center? The mean, the median, mode, right? So those are the measure of central tendency, right? Yeah. And we have talked about the mean before. When we first started off, right? How to do that on Excel, making use of average, right? Same thing with median. This is the keyword for median. You can see the keyword for mean equal to then average bracket open bracket close, depending on the number of columns or number of cells or whatever you want to talk about. Then the median is equal to the median, then bracket open bracket close. Then the mode dot SNGL, then bracket open bracket close. We are still going to look at all those things. So they are not important now, just for the sake of explanation. So we have looked at measure of central tendency. So examples of measures of central tendency is mean, median, and the mode. Now, what of measure of spread? Now, what do we use spread for? We use it to measure variability in a data set. That's what we use spread for. So used to measure variability in a data set. Now, what are examples of a measure of spread? You are talking of range, right? You are talking of variance. You are talking of standard deviation. And you are talking of interquartile range. Those are examples of measures of spread. And now we know what range is. What is range? Maximum minus minimum. Now, when you have a set of values, right? The range is what? The range is the highest value minus the lower value. That's what we mean by maximum and minus minimum. And when you are doing that on Excel, that will be the max keyword equals to max keyword, bracket open bracket close, minus minimum keyword, bracket open bracket close. We'll still see all that later. Then the variance. So yeah, then standard deviation, then interquartile range. We are still going to check all those ones again later. All right. So smaller. All right. Okay. Now data formatting is very, very important that we also format data, right? Now we prepare that. So we format data to prepare for data, prepares data for analysis. Yes. So formatting prepares data for analysis. So what are those keywords when we are talking formatting of data? We're talking of trim spaces. We have to trim it, right? Using this keyword, we have to standardize text case, right? Then consistent dates. The data must have consistent dates. The removal of symbols of garbage. We have to clean. We have to substitute. So formatting prevents formula errors. So those things are important also in data analysis. Now, what is data cleaning? So data cleaning fixes dirty or inconsistent data, right? So when we are cleaning data, what are we doing? We have to look for, we undo missing values. When you have a column, there will be some missing values, right? For example, look at what we did yesterday. We have some cells that are blank, right? So usually those ones are called missing values, meaning nothing is there. So we have to take care of missing values. We have to replace or delete outliers. We have to remove duplicates. We also have duplicates in some cells. So you have to normalize spelling and values. So that is what data cleaning is about. So cleaning gives you reliable analysis results. Then we move to sample and distribution. Now, what is sample? Subset of data used for analysis. That's what sample is. Then what is distribution? Distribution has to do with how data is spread out. So now what are the common types of distribution? We have normal distribution. That one is like bell curve, right? So that is what normal distribution is about. It's more or less like bell curve. I don't know. If we have done mathematics well enough, we will understand really what I'm talking about. But I can show us, let me quickly show us what bell curve look like. Yes, let me show us. So bell curve. Aha. So this is what you have when you are talking of a bell curve. You have something in this shape, So this is what bell curve is. So we also have skewed or long tail, tall, left or right. So we are looking at different types of sample distribution. So we have looked at bell curves. Now, how does the skewed curve look like? So let's see how that looks like also. So how does that look like? Sorry. How does skewed curve? So I don't just want to be saying all those things. Skewed curve, yes. Yeah, you can see. Let me see. Refers to a distribution where the data is not symmetric, meaning one side of the curve has a longer tail than the other. You see, it's more or less like the bell curve, only that, okay, let me see if I can see better there. Okay, now, this is a kind of a skew curve. You can see that one side is, the sides are not the same. The curve is not the same, yes. One side is larger than the other side, you can see. So that's the idea of a skewed curve. So and another example is uniform. All sides are the same, right? When we talk of uniform curve, so the curve is the same. Now, what are the tools for normal distribution? You have histogram. So I believe we know what histogram is, and even at that, we are still going to see everything about histogram later. Then box plots for spreads and outliers. So those are examples of normal distribution. Then are the identifying patterns. So in the process of doing analysis also, we need to identify patterns, look for trends or association, repeated behavior, relationship between variables, right? And what are those tools that we use for identifying patterns? We use correlation analysis, we use time series charts, and we use conditional formatting, right? So those are the tools we use for identifying patterns. So patterns help you make these predictions. So these tools for identifying patterns will help you to make predictions. Yes, you can make a lot of predictions from just correlation analysis alone, and even from time series. So they are also very, very important. Then line of best fits, right, is also very, very important in, you will see equation of line, something like that. Equation of line like y equals to mx plus c, thereabouts. All these things are useful. So now, useful for regression, forecasting, and understanding direction. So that's what we use. Line of best fit is also known as trend line, right? Then we have heat maps. Now use color coding to highlight high or low values. So we are still going to make use of all of this as we move on. Then accuracy, then what again? Yeah. So with this is what every data or most data we go through. This is all the stage they are going to pass through. So in full, you collect the data, you format it, you clean it, you describe it using mean, median, mode, standard deviation, you aggregate and group for summaries. Then you visualize using charts, trend lines, and heat maps. You analyze patterns using correlation distribution. You ensure accuracy, test, clean again if needed, then you report findings with confidence. So it is that report you are going to submit. So every other thing that you do does not really concern anybody. So that is the end of Solomon branding. So let me stop the recording so that people can ask a question.